Hi everyone, Dr. Bruce here. In this video, I wanted to do an overview of pretty much the entire endocrine system. So I created this infographic that should help you sort of summarize the entire endocrine system in one picture. Let's take a look at this. We're going to begin with the pineal gland, which is in the brain, posterior to the thalamus in the posterior portion of the brain there. And the pineal gland secretes a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin works to regulate sleep-wake cycles. And what that means is that when you're ready to go to sleep, your brain or the pineal gland secretes melatonin and it helps you sleep. Typically, this requires being in darkness. So when you're in darkness, you're ready to sleep, you secrete melatonin. The hypothalamus is also really important with regard to the endocrine system because it secretes a number of hormones that control the secretions of hormones from the anterior pituitary gland. So these include things like TRH or thyrotropin releasing hormone, CRH or corticotropin releasing hormone, GHRH, which is growth hormone releasing hormone, and somatostatin and gonadotropin releasing hormone. So let's take a look at some of these. Let's start with thyrotropin releasing hormone. This is secreted by the hypothalamus and it travels to the anterior portion of the pituitary gland via a vascular network. It tells the anterior pituitary to secrete TSH or thyroid stimulating hormone. This travels in the blood to the thyroid gland and tells it to secrete T3 and T4, which is triiodothyronine and tetraiodothyronine or thyroxine. Both of these work to regulate metabolism and growth. So the idea there is that if you have a high amount of T3 and T4, your metabolism is high and you burn a lot of calories. If your metabolism is low, if your T3 and T4 are low, your metabolism is low, and then you tend not to burn calories and store fat. Of the two hormones, T3 is the more active form. So a lot of the T4 gets converted by other organs like the liver into T3. All right, let's look at CRH. Corticotropin releasing hormone secreted by the hypothalamus also travels to the anterior portion of the pituitary gland and tells it to secrete ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropin hormone. ACTH then travels to the adrenal gland and it tells you what it does. Adrenal cortico, meaning it travels to the adrenal cortex. When it gets there, it tells the adrenal gland to secrete two hormones, aldosterone and cortisol. Aldosterone, one of the functions of aldosterone is to retain sodium. So it tells the kidneys to retain sodium. Hang on to sodium. Cortisol is also secreted by the adrenal cortex in response to ACTH. That helps with glucose regulation. So here's the story on cortisol. Cortisol will convert non-carbohydrate sources into glucose. So let's say you get up in the morning and you eat a sugary cereal and you get a lot of blood glucose in your system. So what happens is the pancreas will try to regulate that glucose and get it down, and you'll have a good supply of glucose for a little while, and then after an hour or two, your glucose levels will drop. That's called hypoglycemia or rebound hypoglycemia. What will happen then is cortisol levels will come up, and they'll start to convert non-carbohydrate sources like fats at first, and then if you don't have any fats, it'll start converting proteins into glucose. So that's what happens with cortisol. Okay, so let's go back here and look at growth hormone releasing hormone secreted by the hypothalamus. And there are two, and it helps to regulate growth hormone. So GHRH and somatostatin both work to regulate growth hormone. GHRH has a positive effect, so it'll stimulate the anterior pituitary to secrete growth hormone. Somatostatin has a negative or inhibitory effect on the secretion of growth hormone by the anterior pituitary. And growth hormone pretty much does what you think it would do. It helps to regulate growth. So it stimulates those ossification centers in bone, so it helps your bones grow. It also goes to the liver and tells the liver to produce what are called colony stimulating factors, which travel throughout the body to the other tissues and stimulate growth. All right, the last hypothalamic hormone is GnRH, or gonadotropin releasing hormone. This will travel to the anterior pituitary again and allow for the secretion of FSH and LH, or follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Both of these help to regulate reproduction. They have different roles in the male and the female. For example, follicle stimulating hormone stimulates the follicle to develop in the female, but also stimulates what's called spermatogenesis in the male. Luteinizing hormone, many of you know, luteinizing hormone produces ovulation in the female, and then in the male, it allows for or promotes testosterone production. All right, let's take a look at the pituitary gland. I think I already went through these, but let's go down to the thyroid. So the thyroid, besides secreting T3 and T4, also secretes another hormone called calcitonin. Calcitonin helps with calcium regulation and it decreases blood calcium. So the way it does that is there are certain cells in your bones that will shuttle calcium between the bones and the blood. For example, there are osteoblasts. They move calcium from blood to bones, and osteoclasts that remove calcium from bones and deposit it in the blood. Calcitonin works by promoting osteoblastic activity and inhibiting osteoclastic activity. The pancreas, then, two hormones there. We're going to look at insulin and glucagon. Insulin is secreted in response to high blood glucose levels, so it works to decrease blood glucose, and glucagon does the opposite. It increases blood glucose. So they both work a little bit differently. One way insulin works, it connects to insulin receptors on cells like muscle cells. When it connects to the insulin receptor, it allows glucose into the cell to be converted to ATP. So as long as those insulin receptors are working, insulin can connect, and then glucose goes into the cell, out of the blood, and the blood glucose level decreases. All right, I think pretty much that does it for the overview of the entire endocrine system. Hopefully this helps you learn this, and let me know if you have any questions, and see you in cyberspace.